In this video, we're going to go over how to convert a spreadsheet into a powerful dashboard. One of the most common things that we work with small businesses on and large businesses. In fact, we have a service called Liftoff where we can help you do all the things that we're going to do in this video and create a process where you can re-import fresh data or import all of the data and automatically update all your dashboards and reports and have all the benefits of DashboardFox, all the security capabilities, all the report building capabilities, and everything that you can do within the product. Now, before we start to import any data, I want to actually take a look at spreadsheets and how we need those to be formatted. So a lot of times when you're working with spreadsheets, they kind of look like this. You've already applied some formatting. You'll notice up here in row number 1, some text, and you've got down here, you'll notice a totals value. We want to clean all that out. When we're starting to import this, what we're going to do is actually convert this spreadsheet into database format. We're going to actually import it into the DashboardFox PostgreSQL database, or you can import it into other databases as well. But that's going to allow you to have a lot of power if you start to create a template and clean up this spreadsheet. Let's take a look at a properly formatted spreadsheet. What we want to have is just a set of column headers and a set of rows. No extra formatting or headers or footers or aggregations or subtotals or anything like that. And we want to make sure that there's no blank columns. Every column is full all the way to the end. We want to have a nice name, service underscore desk in this case. And you'll notice that I've got worksheets in here. You can have more than one worksheet in your workbook import. And the power of the DashboardFox implementation is that we can actually start to treat your spreadsheets like a database. If you have data from multiple sources and there's a relationship, so for example, in my call request sheet here, this is all my main ticket data in this particular case. You'll see I've got IDs, like purse ID as an example. Reference number, that's actually a ticket number, but if I scroll over, you can see a lot of data over here. Things like assignee and group ID and customer and category. They all look kind of cryptic. But if I look at these other spreadsheets in this workbook, I've got those things mapped out properly here. I've got a relationship between these spreadsheets that tells me all about the contact by linking these contact UUIDs. I'm going to show you when we import this in DashboardFox how I can relate those things together and actually treat this spreadsheet like a database and then give you the power to upload and update things really easily. So you have the best of both worlds. But this is the format we want. We just want raw data. Now once we get this, let me show you a glimpse of what the end game looks like. We're going to be able to import all these things into DashboardFox, and in the app builder you'll kind of see here we've got all those individual worksheets joined together like a database, and we're bringing individual fields into this report tree, breaking them up into different report types, and that actually is the app that you see in our demo mode. If we go to Composer in demo mode and pick Service Desk, you're actually working on this spreadsheet that I just showed you. Now we have a lot of really cool things behind the scene to refresh dates and things like that, so you're looking at current information. But you can kind of see now users can go in and free flow build any reports they want, and they have the ability to have dashboards and documents, and anytime there's new data they can go in and just update those spreadsheets and then re-upload those in the app builder to refresh those data points. So this is an example of some of the reports that we built off of the data in that spreadsheet that we were taking a look at. So let's get started. Let's actually show you how to build these within DashboardFox. We're going to focus on the importing of the spreadsheet in this video. I've already uploaded that. I've got that spreadsheet out here in my downloads folder on my server. Doesn't have to be on the server. It could be on your desktop. It's wherever you're going to be using the browser. So you imagine that you have this on your desktop that we just took a look at. What I'm going to do, I'm in production mode, so you're not able to import anything in demo mode. So I've switched over into my production mode. That's going to allow me to go to Admin, App Databases, and register a new app. You're not going to see this register new app button unless you are in production mode. Let's go ahead and click on that, and you'll see one of the options is to register an Excel or CSV app. So we're going to go ahead and pick that. Now, the more prep work you do on that Excel spreadsheet, the better. And when I say prep work, what I'm mainly referring to is going through. Let's take a look at the one that we're going to work with here. Going through, and if it's a date field, let's go and find one of our date fields in this report, like this, for example. I want to select that whole column, format cells, and I want to make sure that it actually is going to be set up as a date. Excel has the ability to really do a whole bunch of crazy things when it comes to dates and numbers, and it doesn't, if you don't go in and properly format the cells, you're going to get some unexpected results here. Now I'm going to show you how we're going to do validation as we import, but that's one of the key steps that can really save you a lot of time, is to make sure your Excel columns are formatted from a number format perspective properly. I'm going to hit next. I'm going to give it a name. You can always change this later, but I'll call it service desk data in this case. This name will be leveraged as our app name, but you can always update that from the app database settings. I'm going to go ahead and choose that file. Now I have this file saved, so I'm going to pick it. And I always want to make sure I check this box here that says it contains a header row. And we do highly recommend that you have header rows, descriptive names on your columns. Otherwise, you're going to have to do more work in the app builder to make those names more friendly for your users. So we're going to click on Upload. You'll see a little status bar depending on the size of the file. And then what that's going to do is take us into a validation screen. It's going to bring in about the top 100 rows here. And what we want to do is, for anything that we want to treat numerically or as a number, we want to validate that data. And this is where, if you prep your Excel sheet before you do that upload, if you go in and format all those cells, this makes this process really easily. What I want to do is go through and just highlight anything that I want to make sure is a number. Now, IDs, they could be a number, depends on how you want to treat that ID. I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice here in some browsers you actually can't scroll. I'm going to just adjust my size of my browser, and you'll see it'll bring that back for me. I'm going to scroll. All these are text fields. And you'll notice that by default it says string there, but we're going to click and show you once we get to some dates here. All right, so now I'm going to click on the column header date. You'll see I selected date, and because I formatted that properly in Excel, it is automatically coming in as a date time, which is exactly right. Close date. Okay, now close date did not. Close date came in as a string because we didn't apply the formatting on that particular field. So what we want to do before we do the importing is we want to change that into a date time field, and we want to take a look at the validation options. If we never want to import bad data, we want to kill the process and stop everything, then we want to leave that on error. But if we want to say, let's make some defaults here, and if the date is invalid, make it a null or 0 value, we can do that as well. Generally on a date field, you'll just null it out if it's invalid. Let's go ahead and do error and hit update. It'll actually tell us if there's any errors, and you'll see here we have a couple of rows in this data that is invalid. In fact, the problem is there are some blank dates that are already null values. So what we want to do on this is set this to be a validation option of null, and we want to update this column. And now as we import this data, every time we see something in this column that's not a date, we're going to default it to a null value. So that's the process of going through and looking at those things. Priority can be a string or a number. A lot of that depends on how you want to treat it in your reports. If it's a numeric sort order, then you want it to come in as a number. Priority in the case of a service desk doesn't have to be a number. You can actually have some text there. So we're going to leave that as a text. And active flag, generally this is, you'll see that active flag came in as a real because they've got just zeros and ones here. I'm going to go ahead and just hit update to validate and see. Let's do an error validation and just make sure everything is correct on that. We wouldn't have brought that in as a real if Excel didn't have it already defined as a real. So generally, if you see it defined that way, you're going to be in good shape. Now, because this had multiple worksheets, we would follow this process on each of those worksheets and go through, and you'll notice that to get those scroll bars back, I'm just going to slightly adjust my browser and it'll come back. Telephone number is a string, you'll see. Date of birth should be date time. It is. And that would be the process. After you go through and configure all your sheets and all your non-string oriented fields properly, the last step of the process is to hit this button called process. You'll see this checkbox is going to do that validation on all the fields as it imports this data into the database. So let's go ahead and hit the process button. It'll give you a lot of status information up here, and that happened pretty fast. It brought all that data in. So let's take a look at what that added into the product. Let's go back into app databases. You'll see now we have our app, Service Desk Data. It was automatically imported into the PostgreSQL database. When we go into our app builder, we've got Service Desk Data as an application. Now you'll notice that by default, every single one of those report types or spreadsheets were brought in as report types. Now because our intention in that demo that we showed you was to bring and compress all these into one report type, probably going to delete these at some point. But for now, I'll keep them in because you'll see that's a one-to-one relationship. Call request, all those columns were brought in automatically, and I've got all of that one spreadsheet. If I click on contacts, all that contact data was brought in automatically, and I've got the ability to see all those things there. You'll see date of birth is a timestamp, so it'll show you how it was imported into the database and so on. And immediately, if I wanted to start building reports, I could go right into the composer and start to use all those report types. We've got our service desk data here. You'll see those report types are listed. And that's why once we ultimately build the report types the way we want to in this scenario, you won't have all of these listed. We'll actually go in and delete those in the app builder. But just to show you, if this was a document where you did want to report on each of those spreadsheets, they would automatically be brought into a report type, and you'll see that all the columns by default will be there in exactly the format you have there. So if you do name those columns nice, you name those spreadsheets nicely, everything sort of flows perfectly. And that's why part of the liftoff service offering is to build you a template so that you have a good template to use. You'll see if I go ahead and pick a couple of these items here, I'm already have that data imported and I can start to build reports. So you can kind of see the speed on how we can convert that Excel into a powerful interactive dashboard and reporting solution. Now let's go back to the app builder and take a look at a few things that you would do here, or that we would do as part of the liftoff service. A couple things we would do is, again, we would clean up these report types. In this particular scenario, we on purpose imported spreadsheets in that workbook that have a relationship. So ultimately, as you saw at the beginning of this video, we want to bring all those spreadsheets into a single report type, not just the one here. So let's say, for example, I'll go ahead and add an extra one in. If I scroll down in my list, I'll be able to find in this database where my other sheets are located. So you'll see here, Service Desk. This is the name of our template, Service Desk, and that's the extension of the Excel. And then these are the names of our spreadsheets within that. So if I wanted to bring in my status, I'll call it CR stat. This could be any sort of alias. I like to keep it within about 3 to 5 characters, no special characters or anything like that. And I hit save, you'll see that that actually brings that table into this report type space here with those statuses. So now that I have these two tables in, I can build the relationship between those two tables. I'm going to check these two boxes and select this middle icon and then pick the relationship. And in this case, the purse ID in my main table is going to be the purse ID in this particular table. And that's just the names of the column headers and how we built that spreadsheet. These could be anything, but you'll see now I have that relationship. And now what I can do is, I'll expand this, I want to add in the actual status code as part of this report type. So I'll select this folder here. I think it's in SIM. We'll change SIM to be status code, which is something that a user would understand. It adds at the bottom of the list. I'll drag it up where I want it in the list. And now immediately I can go to the composer and test this out. And what that's going to allow me to do is, as a user, start to build reports. If I pick ticket and I pick status code, I have no idea that that's coming from two different tables and two different spreadsheets. But now I've got all that information represented in one report tree for easy reporting. Now, just to wrap up things, there's a lot of cleanup in this particular app that I would do. Just to show you those concepts, I would change names of report types by just editing and giving it, this would be my tickets, maybe, would be a better name for that. I would go in and change names of folders. I would delete fields that had no purpose or reason to have users have access to that. So ID for the purse ID is no longer needed. So I would delete that, for example. I may come in here and change things like refnum was a column header in my spreadsheet, but doesn't really make sense for users. So I could go in and select that, edit that, and maybe change that to reference number if that is in fact what we called it in our organization. So you can see that you can do some cleanup, and I can even start to make new folder structures. And maybe I want to start to convert a date field into a bunch of date permutations, and I would add that under my date folder once I bring in some fields there. Let's take our open date as an example and drag it under our folder. Oh, I dragged it in the wrong one. And drag it under our date field, and you'll see that that represents a folder now because it has things underneath it. So there's a lot of those things like that, and these are things that, as part of our liftoff service, we take care of for you, helping you build your template, helping you structure your app into something that is extremely user friendly based on your report requirements and the data that you're loading in from Excel, and then taking that into the composer and starting to build a set of reports and set of dashboards. If you have any questions at all about this process, just reach out to us at support.dashboardfox.com. And if you want to talk about the liftoff service to start to take your spreadsheets and bring them into an interactive dashboard environment, just go to dashboardfox.com and contact us. Request a trial, request a live demo, any of the methods. Tell us what you're looking for, and we'll join a call and start to bring your data to life.